from the Employee Assistance Program, EAP. And today we have Raheem Skinner with us, and he's going to present on managing stress during the coronavirus, which we are all well aware of that. So I'll let Raheem introduce himself and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. I appreciate that. Good afternoon, everybody. Like Ron said, my name is Raheem Skinner. I'm a mental health specialist. I've been in the mental health field for about 21 years and dealing with all types of different people from all walks of life, homeless people, people with professional jobs, and just focusing on wellness and basically life transitions. And so one of the biggest transitions that everybody's been a part of recently is living in a pandemic, right? And so today we're going to talk about how to deal with the stress that comes along with that. Unless you're of a certain age, this is your first pandemic, okay? And so it's to use a word that's been thrown around a lot, it's unprecedented, right? And that just means that there's really not a guide for it. Even when the bird flu happened 100 years ago, a little over 100 years ago, it's different now, right? We're so connected by the internet, by social media and things like that. And our world really did get smaller through the pandemic. You know, we lost a lot of freedom and things that we generally take for granted across the world, right? So it was at a large scale. So how to deal with stress in that time is just one of those things that everybody should be kind of tapping into a little bit. And so today we're going to do that, okay? So make sure that we get the best of this situation and not vice versa. All right, I'm going to start by sharing my screen. And so I'm going to share my screen, so I may not be able to see you if you raise your hand, but if you use the chat, I should be able to get an alert. And if you want to participate that way, you'd be fine to do so, okay? Let's see, window. Oh, here we go. All right. Oops. Okay. All right, so we're going to go through this slide and just share things. And again, if you want to talk about anything personal, whatever happens in here, stays in here, that type of rule, and, respect each other's sharing and privacy and things like that. So if you had examples or you just want to talk through the chat feature, feel free to do so, okay? All right, so by the end of this presentation, we'll hopefully learn at least one thing to help us kind of manage stress. I would say even more importantly, we'll help others, and that could be our coworkers, our family and friends, right? What's the thing they say about the oxygen in the airplane, that we can't assist others until we do ours first, right? So that's true. That's a two-part mission, is that one, we take care of ourselves so we can help others. And so we generally want to take care of ourselves and be well so we can help others. Those two things go together. And they really don't work well if we try to separate them, right? So we want to definitely make sure to do that. Best practices is another way to say the best way to do something, right? It's been tried and true. And generally, if something is called a best practice, it's been studied, and scientifically, it's been proven to be one of the best ways to do something. And so when we leave the day, we'll learn some best practices on how to deal with stress during COVID-19 or any extraordinary time, okay? All right, so we break down what a pandemic is, right? We've all heard it. We use the word pan means across, endemic means people. So it's across all people, across all people. It means a pan means all, right? I'm sorry. So it means across all people. An epidemic is us. And so I live in North Carolina. So if I said something like, if it was an epidemic here, it would be an epidemic in North Carolina, or maybe in my region, specific region of North Carolina, right? And so a pandemic affects all of us globally. And so everybody was affected in 2020 by the pandemic, and that's why it had such an influence. The slide shows other global pandemics and their impacts on the world too. A lot of people have been affected by different things, right? And these things are kind of specific to the people that have these things, right? So AIDS, influenza, the Asian flu, the flu pandemic in 1918, right? And so those things were horrible, but maybe people felt like, can't be me, right? Or I'm not affected to a degree, right? Especially with AIDS, but maybe people in the AIDS epidemic started practicing some best practices like protected sex, right? Or abstinence. Um, I remember in the 80s, there was a big push to talk to teenagers about sex. And they used the pandemic as an opportunity to talk about either safe sex or abstinence, right? Mostly abstinence. And there were these wild people talking about giving out condoms to kids and things like that. It was new for the time, right? And so it was full of controversy like today. Right. We've got masks, and we've got mandates, and we've got, federal stuff happening, and people on both sides of that issue. Right. So some people are like, these are going to save our lives. And some people are like, these are an infringement, and those types of things. Right. And in the next 100 years, the next 20 years, we'll look back and have better insight into what's going on now, like we can with these things that are on the screen now. Right. All right. So who remembers? Early spring or late winter 2020? Right. Fun fact. I was sitting at my laptop just like I am right now, thinking to myself, this will blow over quickly. It'll be a couple weeks. I remember when my daughter was taken out of school, and I was just like, hey, this won't last long at all, and here we are, literally going into the second year. Seemingly better, in a better place, but still a lot of uncertainty. And even at this point, while we think some things are getting better, there's still a lot of unknowns, right? Will it ever really get better? Will it get back to before, right? Or are we living in what we were saying in the beginning of 2021? Are we living in a new normal, right? And honestly, we just don't know. And really anybody that would claim to know, I would take it with a grain of salt, right? Because again, unless you've been in a pandemic, you would have insight, but still things are so different now. It's one of those things we have to live in and evolve to really know what's going to happen. Unprecedented for this lifetime, indeed. We just don't know what's going to happen. And the best we can do is say, we have best practices that say if we do this, then this can happen. And by all means it should. And then if that changes along the way, we bend and we flow with that, right? I really want to know what some of y'all are thinking about in the beginning of COVID-19, 2020, maybe some specifics about being uncertain, about being unknowns, or if you were kind of like me and was just like, it's not going to be anything, it was serious, but it can't be that serious, right? Right. That type of thing. I wonder if anybody felt like that. Let's see, I'm going to look. Oops. I'm going to go back to the group here, maybe look in the chat. I see a couple of comments. Yeah, here we go. Thank you, Farah. I appreciate that. I think we sometimes want to take comfort in believing all we've been told, but skepticism is good science. And that's exactly it. Science is literally not knowing what something is. It's the process of doing something repetitively and saying that most likely this is what it is, right? So if you do something 1,000 times and something comes up to be true, you do it 1,001 times and it changes, you adjust to that and you share those facts and that research, right? Skepticism is a good scientist. Research, real live research and putting things to trial by fire, right? And at this point, it's seemingly that lives depend on it. So we definitely want to be skeptical. We want to try things. We want to examine things to make sure that they are what people say they are. Someone else says, I tend to be a pessimist. So I was definitely thinking about and fearing all of the worst case scenarios. I hear that. So I joined you maybe about the summertime After the point that everybody said, oh, well, the summer it'll burn off and it's not doing well in high heat areas. And, July or June came and went. And I definitely started thinking a little bit more negatively as well. As a not quite bona fide pessimist, but as a person who tends to naturally think that way, critically and maybe worst case scenarios. Training like this is good, the stress and just how to kind of detach yourself from what's, maybe from the news and things that continually pour in opinions, right? Because we talked about earlier how, we've got best guesses, and some of those guesses are credible and it's probably going to end up that way or somewhere in that ballpark, right? We've got other opinions that we're pretty sure are not credible, right? It's more than likely not going to end up in that way or in that ballpark, right? And so that's what we're hearing every day is people saying, this is my best guess and it's popular and it's true, or this is my best guess, it's popular, even though it may not happen, right? And so sometimes just, jumping into it, a good thing to do is just to pull back and stop listening to all those opinions and things like that. And that's for ourselves, that's for self-care and for our minds, to give our minds a rest and engage in things that are real and true to us and in front of us, right? Thank y'all for sharing. I appreciate that. Anybody else, please feel free to write and jump in the conversation, okay? I'm jumping back into the PowerPoint. All right. All right, and so staggering statistics. We talk about things like that. Like one of the first things that really grabbed people in the beginning of this was the numbers, how they grew incrementally. So, you would have a week where like 100 people were infected. And it was a big deal, right? It was a big deal, but it was 100 people. And, you live in a medium-sized town, there's 250,000 people. And so you say, well, statistically, I've got a pretty good chance of nothing happening to me, being struck by lightning is more likely, right? That type of thing. But then the next week, it would grow not to 200, but to 1,000, right? And then the next week it would be like 5,000 or 1,500 or 2,700 or something like that, right? And so then we saw those statistics that were just growing like really fast because of the highly contagious nature of the disease or whatever. And so we saw things like that. And so those things peak something in our brain, right? Our brains are designed to protect us. And so we take in information about things that are around us naturally. We're walking, we're at work, we tend to pick up on cues, social cues, so we know how to act. We can know when people are upset or hurting, when we're in danger, things like that. And so the same is true for things we read and listen to. Statistics is one of those things that we tend to respect like a doctor's word, right? Because statistics are science, right? And we are generally geared to trust science and trust medicine and trust doctors. And so we hear those things, even with skepticism, we hear those things and we say, hey, there's probably some truth to this. And that's a lot of people, right? Or we start basing our opinions off those statistics because they are staggering. They're larger numbers than other diseases or things, right? And think about the COVID-19 thing. There was a lot of change in 2020. It was highly contagious. It was, we'll get a whole wrap on it the next few weeks. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask, things like that. And it was just really a lot of change, and there was no defined pathway, right? Which is what the majority of humans like. We like to know, okay, so I can go out, versus don't go anywhere, then you can go places. And it's just a lot of uncertainty again. Some people didn't make it through COVID-19. And at this point, I'm talking about businesses and just areas of industry just didn't do well at all, right? So like the entire like restaurant industry just really suffered. You have to have people come into an establishment and eat and tip your people, and leave reviews and bring friends and bring family. None of that happened for this industry. And so they were really hurt. And the people that worked in those industries that enjoyed it, they were totally uprooted, right? And that's across most walks of life. Some industries did better, but everybody felt the jolt, right? Even if they were sustainable, they still had to catch up because nobody was prepared to say, all right, I've got 500 employees that now work from home. And so we have to revamp everything everything we've taught them to be effective from home, right? As employees, even if we were fortunate enough to keep our jobs, we had to work from home. And if that wasn't something we were doing already, it was a big learning curve. Um, Working from home is definitely not the same as going in, right? In the chat, churches and houses of worship suffered greatly as well. I worry about recovery for them. Same here. That is a great point. That's an excellent point. They're on par with restaurants, right? I mean, if we think about it, even with online components and online attendance, they've gotten new people, but I don't know that giving has went up. I actually talked to somebody, it was probably last year, and they were saying that they had new people coming in at a higher clip than when people were going in person, but the giving either stayed the same or had started to decline. And so churches, like restaurants, need people to go, enjoy, invite others, right? To tithe, make offerings, building funds, all that stuff, and that's how churches survive. And so churches also and houses of worship, they definitely felt that lack of engagement, community engagement. And then if we look a little further into that, people that are assisted by churches and house of worship, right? Because most churches or a lot of churches are involved in their community, if not the community at large, at least the community that immediately surrounds them in some way, form, or fashion. And that wasn't able to happen. So think about that ripple effect that happened that way. And so people were, doubling down and being stressed, not having resources. So just a time of uncertainty, and I would go so far as to say fear, even, right? So talk about when we're going through a stressful situation, what makes a person act a certain way. There's a saying, it says the same water that hardens the egg softens the potato, right? And so it just means that the same situation can happen to two different people and there's two different outcomes, right? One person can not fare well, another person can thrive, right? In a chaotic situation. There are people who opened businesses during the pandemic and are doing really well. And had the pandemic not happened and they didn't lose their job, they probably still would have had a good life, right? Not even being pessimistic at this point. They probably still would have had a good life working and having family and things like that. But there was something in them that said, hey, I'm going to do something different because I have to, basically, or because I feel like I have a chance to. And they did. And there are people who weren't fortunate in that regard that have been at companies for 20 years, almost at retirement. The company folded, right, through no fault of their own, and they did not fare as well, right? And on a personal, individual level, our past affects how we view things, right? And so in the pandemic, I myself, I gained 30 pounds during that first stay-at-home order. So, and I didn't think I was stressed. I knew I was a little stressed because I was working from home, and I worked from home before the pandemic, but this was 24/7. My wife was working at home. My daughter was going to school at home. A lot different. And so at the end of the year, I had gained 30 pounds. I didn't even know it didn't come out of nowhere quite, but it was pretty quick. And I was like, wow, where did this come from? And so it affected me, and I truly didn't see it affecting me that much, but I know I was eating my feelings at that point, right? Sleep patterns could possibly change for people because that's a coping mechanism. People like to sleep. It feels good. Not even going into the depression symptoms things, but just in terms of what do you do on Saturday or Sunday on your days off? You relax, you maybe sit on the couch, sit in the bed, take a nap if you choose. And sleep is one of those things that people tend to enjoy doing or resting. And given all that time, extra time that we had, confined time during the beginning of the pandemic, it could affect your sleep patterns. Being in the house that much could have affected your sleep patterns. The question, how how the pandemic and the stress impacts our ability to engage with other people. I think that's interesting because we already deal with people differently because of the internet and because of social media. And so here we have this time and this point in time where we really aren't encouraged to be around other people. And so that happened for months. And then it was kind of like, okay, you can go back to speaking to people. And I heard plenty of people say, it was weird trying to people again, trying to engage with people. I kind of forgot how to, right? And so I know maybe for the most part, it affected how people related to other people, especially outside of your house or even in your house. Divorce rates went up, right? Domestic abuse went up. So it wasn't fun for everyone, Some people say, I'll take this opportunity and I'll create this bond with my family, and I'm glad I'm here in the home, and we'll hang out a little bit more. We'll close the laptops and just watch movies and spend time with each other. Everybody didn't see it that way though, so the relationships really were affected by this time. I wonder if anybody here had positive coping things. Did you find ways to enjoy yourself during the stay-at-home order? And did you find ways to enjoy your family and things like that? Because that was a big deal. The way that we coped then has an impact on how we feel now, right? I jump back in the chat. Okay, I'm back. So I tell people all the time, it's okay to talk to yourself. And I don't mean in a traditional sense, what did I come in the kitchen for? I mean, how am I feeling right now? Right? Like a self-inventory. And being honest. And it's okay to have really any emotion. It's okay to say I'm mad, I'm scared, I'm fearful, I'm uncertain, I'm happy, what's the word? I'm scared because I'm not scared, right? I'm scared that I don't have an emotion tied to the pandemic, I pretty much think things are going to be how they're going to be, and it's okay to think that. Then maybe ask yourself, why do you think that, and be aware of your thoughts and your feelings. And people that are aware of their thoughts and feelings tend to have less issues with depression and anxiety and lower stress because they're kind of on top of it, right? How's your family doing? It's okay to ask your family, hey, how are you doing? And they say, oh, I'm good. And you say, no, really, how are you doing? They make it weird, really just ask. Just check. Okay, we got some examples of how people were coping during the pandemic. I've enjoyed not watching news, but doing things like coloring, puzzles, reading books, and walking. Definitely. Definitely. Another person also said daily walking with a friend in the neighborhood. Up. I was breaking up at 354. Okay, it's 354 now. Can y'all hear me now? Let me hear you now. Excellent. All right, perfect. 10-4. Okay, great. Yeah, daily walking with a friend in the neighborhood. So that's how I lost that weight too, by walking. A friend of mine also gained 30 pounds, and he said, hey man, I've been walking and I lost all this weight. You should walk with me. And we created a habit doing that. We did it for about a year. And it was really good. And now I walk a lot, and I wouldn't have done that if not for the pandemic. And walking is one of those things that just reverses age. Anyway, it's like one of the best exercises you can do. It's easy on your joints, and it's highly recommended for stress reduction, better sleep, all that stuff. It hits a lot of boxes. And so had it not been for the pandemic or stay-at-home order, I probably wouldn't be a walker. It just wasn't my thing. And I ran before this, but I'm not a walker. And so it really changed my life. And so that's just an example of, those things that carry over, right? And kind of help us through. So daily walking with a friend, coloring, puzzles, reading books, those things are amazing. And just really good habits to have. Anyway, again, thank y'all for sharing those things. Let's see. Yeah. So along with that walk and talking about that healthy exercise, eating healthy, right? So eating healthy is self-explanatory, of course, right? Learning yourself and how you eat and what you eat, really helps. And so I find out that I'm a snacker, right? I prefer to eat meals and real food. And so the things that I snack on matter, right? Because real quick, I found myself eating like an extra 400, 500,000 calories of snacks or things like that. And so I said, well, hey, I do like the snack because I got a high metabolism and I, used to work out and everything. And so if I eat healthier snacks, lower calorie snacks, I should be able to kind of have the best of both worlds. And so that really works for me, right? And so asking yourself, if your goal is to eat healthy, what do you like, right? And fortunate for me, I'm greedy. I like everything. So I can eat vegetables and it's okay with me. I know a lot of people who don't like vegetables. And so their healthy is different than mine. And that's perfectly fine. So knowing yourself, the same way we talk about knowing, our emotions and how we feel, it's important to know what we like in terms of eating healthy and exercise and things like that. I didn't think I would like walking. I really did though, and I really do. And it's really easier than running and things like that. And it fits, and so knowing how to reduce stress for yourself and things that you like make it a lot easier. If you are a gym rat or you prefer to jog and run and that, then walking may not be for you. You might want to stay in that lane, and that's perfectly fine. Sleep. Sleep solves so many problems. Sleep and rest, good sleep and good rest solves a lot of ailments and problems, right? Like walking is an age reducer, right? So getting on a sleep schedule, right? And people with jobs and with kids, and if you're in school or anything like that, it's hard and it's not the easiest thing to do, okay? But making yourself a priority, then making the things that are necessary to help you stay not stress free, but have less stress and better able to cope with stress, are definitely need to be a priority. And having a regular sleep schedule helps. I think it's 7 hours now, not 8, that they say is the best for you. Talking about science and changing, right? All of our lives we've heard 8 hours of sleep, and now it's closer to 7 is actually optimum, for like peak performance and longevity and things like that. So getting that sleep and saying every night, I'm going to start winding down for bed at 10 o'clock or at, actually there was a study like just last Thursday, it came out, and they said that men who go to sleep after 11 p.m. have a 24% higher risk for cardiovascular disease in their lifetimes. Women who go to sleep after 10 o'clock also have a 24% higher chance of cardiovascular disease in their lifetime, right? And so sleep is like, it's huge. Your body restores itself. Your brain is able to process ideas that it keeps in its subconscious from you. So stresses and traumas and things that our brains just really don't want us to deal with during the daytime, it deals with when we're asleep. Right. And so when we don't get that sleep, when we get improper sleep or rest, our brain can't do that. And we're wondering why we have anxiety or are constantly thinking about things in the daytime. And it's because we haven't really given our brain that proper regimen of saying, hey, every night you can do what you need to do between 10 and 6 or 10 and 7, whatever the hours would be, right? And so that's how powerful our brains are. And when we don't give them time, it'll continue to do its job, even if we don't do its time. And then those things can be detrimental to us. Time with friends is always great. We talked about, blocking off time for the news. I enjoy the news. I mean, I just generally, I'm sorry, dog. I generally enjoy the news, and it doesn't matter where it's coming from. I listen. I like to be informed, but there's sometimes during the day that I say I'm not listening to any news right now. I'm going to listen to some music that's stress-free that I like. I'm going to talk to some real life people and do things like that. Another huge one is seeking help when needed, right? Tell somebody. You got to tell somebody when things aren't going well in your life. And I hear people say that, people should know. Oh, some people are going to leave at 4 o'clock. Okay. And so we've got to tell people that, we're something's not right. I've been feeling more lethargic lately. I've been feeling unmotivated. I'm not finding interest in things that I used to enjoy, things like that, right? And it sounds counterintuitive because it's like, whoa, I don't feel well. And part of our survival instinct and why humans are still alive is because we were able to conceal weakness, right, amongst our tribe and other tribes, because the weakest people, we were thrown off cliffs, right? And so it's in our DNA not to tell people that we are feeling unwell. But in this society today, the opposite is true. The people that make the most noise and say, attend to me, attend to my health needs, they live the longest, right? And are able to impact their communities better and longer because they do say, hey, I need that help, and there's help out there, but we have to ask for it and have to make it known that we need that help, right? Okay. I feel like I'm going through it kind of fast. So if you have questions, make sure to utilize the chat, okay? If you got any interjections or comments or anything, use the chat and we will spend some time on it. All right. So again, we talked about that air mask on the plane, right? We definitely want to take care of ourselves. We have to. We have to make sure that we are okay. And then the goal is to reduce stress in people around you. We hear all the time about people who their smiles and their personalities were so bright whenever they came in the room, everybody felt better, everybody smiled, those types of things, right? And so that happens. And imagine if that happened in a collective sense, that everybody in this training of the day just said, you know what, I'm going to be more positive. And I don't mean bleeding heart positive. I mean like just trying, just changing our conversation. And people, it's Monday, and you say, well, I'm glad for another day above ground or something like that, as opposed to I got a case of the Mondays, right? Because Monday's a good day. It's the beginning of the week. Get back to work and see people we hadn't seen over the weekend, maybe, or whatever positive thing we need to say about Monday, right? And it just changes the shift, right? And people are prepared to be communally negative, and you say something positive, it changes that, right? And people tend to go to draw towards that. In terms of stress, we remind people that, nothing's permanent except death, right? Other than that, things can change and get better. And even in grief, we can become better and heal through grief too, right? And we talked about like taking breaks from like social, from the news and even from social media and things like that. We just want to take mental breaks in general. And again, this is a good time for those walks, for coloring, for reading books, for playing with the dog, playing with kids, talking to your significant other, whatever, right? We just want to take those mental breaks. And I used to watch cartoons as an adult when I was married. And my wife was like, why do you watch cartoons? I'm a pretty serious guy, right? And she was like, why do you do that? And I said, sometimes I just need to watch mindless dribble that I don't have to put a lot of thought in. I didn't watch I watched cartoons I had to think a little bit. They were funny and poignant, but still, and she kind of got that. She was like, that makes sense. Not her cup of tea, but she got why I liked them. It was just, the jobs that I have are pretty intense, and I just need something that it's not making me be compassionate. It's not making me think about other people. It's just ridiculous, right? And so that's my mental break, and I do that once a week for about 30 minutes or an hour, and it works. Be a role model, right? Intentionally create relationships where the other person can't offer you anything, right? And just be a model for that person, right? There's a significant amount of good in that. I got a quick story. I'm gonna check the chats while I tell the story, okay? I was watching this thing today, and this guy is a millionaire. He talked about his life's goal was to like build this house, and he ends up building the house. The house has got all these rooms. He builds this pool. The pool's on the cover of magazines. It's got like palm trees hanging over it. He said one night his wife was in the house. He's in the pool just floating, and he started feeling depressed. Sorry about that. He starts feeling depressed, and he's wondering, what happened? And it was because he had achieved this goal and didn't have future goals in place. That's not really the point. The point was what made him feel better was he started listening to Tony. What's the guy? The motivational speaker, Tony, whatever. And so he used to give out turkeys for Christmas and Thanksgiving or whatever. He used to give out turkeys and things for Christmas and Thanksgiving. He said, well, I'm gonna try that too, see how it feels. He said the first turkey he gave out was a single mother with 5 children. She was crying, the kids was crying. He said from that moment he was hooked. And so to date, he had given out like 90,000 turkeys or whatever. And so the point was he started doing for other. Tony Rollins. Okay, maybe that's maybe that's it. Yeah, he's a pretty famous guy. Let's see. I like to say we have to give to others, empty ourselves out before there's room for the universe to bring new good things to us. That's a good concept. I've heard that, and I think that too. That's actually it's true on a lot of levels, and a lot of in a lot of places. We talk about like seed time and harvest and things like that. So there's a time to take things in, right? And so we work hard and we get things, and we have stuff, and we have relationships, and then there's a time to give, right? There's a time to say, you know what, I got this nice dining room set, and I don't. Well, let's use TVs. I know this lady, she had like all these TVs, and then one day she was like, "Why do I have all these TVs?" It's like, it's crazy. It was like on sales, these sales, and she was getting TVs, and she just started giving TVs away. She gave one to like a family member, gave another to a family member, and she was like, "I don't even need this stuff. It's crazy." And so if we look at life like that, like emptying ourselves out to others, right? We'll always have a continual flow. Things will come to you because you give things away. And so not to be religious, but that's like biblical too, right? Seed time and harvest, that type of thing, right? And company organizations use that all the time, and they talk about that. It's just, it's a like a law, right? And so we tap into that by getting outside of ourselves, because even if we're going through something, one of the best ways to get our minds out of what we're going through is to help somebody else. And so I appreciate that input from both of y'all. You're talking about being a role model, yep. And so know and share the facts. And so this says the CDC, share facts, do the best you can and make sure the information you share is credible. What if I share facts and the information changes? Information changes. We talked about that. That's the very definition of science and of fact. The only constant is change. So to a degree, we know that, certain things should stay the same. They might veer a little bit, and they shouldn't change to like a negative, right? If things are good, they should pretty much stay good, but it may be with an addition of something else later, or a reduction of some, but it shouldn't be like the color blue is great and it's good, and then one day they say, oh no, it's very bad. It'll probably change to a lesser degree, or if it changes or something like that, right? Hope that made sense. And we want to help children reduce stress, right? Because we've got these great coping skills, and we can leave the house anytime we want, go for a walk. We can even stress eat if we want. If we say, hey, you know what? I've been feeling kind of down. I really just want to cook because I like cooking. It helps relax me. I'm going to go bake a cake, and I'm going to eat half of it, okay? I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to give the other half away to people who want to eat something. We've got all these great stress relievers and these coping skills, and we got people we can call and talk to. kids, maybe not so much, right? Maybe they don't have all that, those coping skills and those techniques and those mechanisms. Maybe they don't have the freedom to express themselves or the words to express themselves, right? So we want to listen to kids anyway. We want to listen to what they're saying and how they're saying it, and listen for clues, right? Because sometimes kids aren't able to give us exactly what they mean, and so we want to make sure we're listening out for them and hidden meanings and intentions and things like that. Most of the time, we just want our children to know that we're there. I'm glad everything is good. Hey, I'm here for you. You know, if you want to talk about anything, you can talk to me, and that's never a question, right? We don't want to implant our fears on our children. You know, we want to be realistic, but we want to give them accurate information. We want to show them where they can read accurate information. You know, this is a good site you can go to. This is read this book. Let's look at this together. Let's go to this place and ask this person, because I know a lot, but I'm not a specialist. So let's go ask somebody who specializes in this and see what they have to say, right? Talk about modeling healthy habits. When I'm stressed, what do I do, right? And then I would ask myself, is what I do, would I want my daughter to do that, right? Even the eating thing, right? It's not necessarily that bad. I'm not killing anybody. I'm not, not showing up from work on a bender because I ate cherry pie all weekend. However, we all know what can happen if a person gains too much weight too quickly, and we know that that's not the best coping mechanism for stress, right? And so I don't want my daughter to do that, and to learn those habits from me, because we all know that kids are always watching, and they listen to what you say, but they do what you do, right? We teach kids what we know, but we produce who we are, right? We always want to remember that kids, they deal with things the best they can, and usually differently than we do. Right. They have all the feelings we have and about a quarter of the reasoning that we do. Right. And for some of us, that's a lot less reasoning. For some of us, that's still a lot of reasoning, because they tend to pick up how we deal with stress. And so, again, kids have all the emotions we have, right? So if they're disappointed, if they're sad, if they're confused, let them say it, it's okay. Even if we've got our mind made up and I feel like it's this way for sure, right? That's okay to think. If your kid is unsure, let them be unsure and walk them through what or things that helps you, right? And if they're still unsure, it's still okay. It's still okay. Let them come to their conclusion, or not have a conclusion even sometimes, and let them kind of draw their own conclusions and processes, and walk them through the process, rather, excuse me. So this is my thing, right? Mindfulness. Mindfulness is just being in the moment. I know we hear people saying that, and I really tried to make it think of a tangible way to say, what does that mean? What does it mean to be in the moment? It's to be present, and for me, it's not worrying about the future or things I can't control. So if I have a problem, the first thing I ask is that in my control? And if it's not, then I really feel good about letting that thing go, because there's enough things in life that are going to come and be a problem that I can control, that are my responsibility, that I have to handle. There's plenty of those things out there, right? So I definitely don't want to take on things that I can't control or handle, and that's okay. That's being an adult, right? Saying that this is bigger than me, and I really don't have a lot of control over the situation. Another part of that is saying that I need help, right? This is something that is my responsibility. It's overwhelming. I need help with this, right? Because if I don't get help with that, I'm not going to be well mentally. The people around me either aren't going to like me, or they're not going to be well, right? So I want to make sure that I'm putting out the best for everybody, the best vibes, I guess, or whatever, for everybody. And mindfulness helps us do that, right? It's just being aware of yourself chiefly, right? Down the last bullet, it's talking about intentions. And so I'm pretty big on that. On waking up and going to sleep, especially. On waking up, Hey, I'm grateful for the day. I'm going to make today the best day. I'm going to do my best today, period. One of my big things is being 1% better every day, right? And so am I the best employee? Maybe, right? I think I'm decent, but I try every day to do something a little bit better, to tackle something that I hadn't been doing a lot and try to tackle it a little bit better today, right? And so that keeps building, and eventually, you build up a rapport and a reputation of just being better, and it's not even about that, but that's a byproduct of that. And before we go to sleep, I tell people to allow yourselves to get good rest. Tell yourself, if your mind's racing, tell yourself, I worked hard today. I did my very best. If you didn't do your best, say, you know what? I had some opportunities to do better today. Tomorrow, I'll take advantage of that. But right now, I deserve to lay down. I deserve to rest, and my mind deserves to be quiet and not focus on problems, right? And we have to do that. Our brain, its job again is to protect us and to process information. And sometimes it does its job too well. So you have to control your brain and its thinking. You have to talk to yourself and say, hey, I deserve to rest well today. I deserve to sleep. I deserve to feel slumber, right? Those types of things. And intentions, right? Take advantage of the unique opportunities of the situation. So we talked about people who had maybe flourished during the stay-at-home order or the pandemic in general, or at work. It's general. I hate to say things have a silver lining, because that does sound cliche-ish, right? But it's generally true for the most part. There's usually an opportunity to be positive in every situation, right? Work is gotten harder because of the pandemic. Well, at least I've got job security, right? Things like that, right? We generally just want to think of positive ways to deal with things, or at least find that positive. I'm sorry, find that positive thing that we can lean on in a rough situation. Okay. So this talks about being creative, and I guess this is referring to more so in different situations. What do you do, right? And I think like this all the time. Like, if I was in this situation, I would do this. And sometimes I'm right, but sometimes I have been put in a situation that I had mentally prepared for, and the thing that I thought I would do is not what I did, or it wasn't my first instinct. My first instinct sometimes has surprised me, and I say, "Wow, I didn't think I was that guy," you know. And that's okay, right? Because again, I'm pretty aware of my who I am or whatever, and so I catch those things, and and I say, well, I'm gonna do the harder thing and do it this way. What can you do? Again, you're in a stressful situation. That's a big deal. What can you control, right? What can you do about it? And if the answer is nothing, that is a perfectly acceptable answer. They say no is a complete sentence. I don't have any control of the situation is a good and an accurate answer sometimes, right? Now, if you can't do anything because you don't know what to do, then you can find help, and find ways, or find people to talk to help you process it so you can do something, right? That's an option too. So like your EAP, right? Like a good friend, a trusted person. Those things help. Those things can help you. Those people can help you. 10 things to help you do without food or money. In terms of like just, I guess, just being. So I think we're talking about like reading, coloring, things like that. Things that we can do together that don't cost us anything, like parks. I remember in the stay-at-home, when the parks opened back up, they said parks had never experienced a surge like that. I never really wanted to go to the park randomly like that until I couldn't go. My daughter wanted to go and play, and I was like, well, we can't go right now. But when they opened back up, we were there, and I was very happy to be outside at the park. I liked parks before, but it was different. I appreciated parks as opposed to knowing that a park was always there if I chose to go to one, right? And so that appreciation from something that I wasn't able to take advantage of versus being able to later in life. And so that made a big difference. It talks about changes that we're willing to make. It can be small things, to big things, pursue, I don't say pursue happiness, but pursue things that make you feel at peace and whole. A byproduct of that is happiness, right? People who are at peace with themselves, that feel whole about their decisions, about their mind state, about their family, about their home, they tend to be happier, right? Happiness doesn't have to be the goal. It comes with saying that I'm going to make sure that my mind is well, that I'm present, and that I'm not letting fear or stress take advantage of me and run away with my thoughts and my time, right? You go on social media in any avenue, something positive, and you fall on what they call a rabbit hole or turtle hole. I think it's a rabbit hole. You fall in a rabbit hole and minutes tip away from you without even noticing. You look up, 30 minutes went by, and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't mean to do that. So imagine that time spent doing something like looking at something stressful, right? And we just spend that time just absorbing stressful material, negative material, right? So a change that I would make, that I have made sometimes, is to say, you know what, I'm going to back away from this, and my conversation won't be centered around this stressful topic or whatever. And it can be anything, not necessarily a pandemic, but that specifically too, right? Enjoy being alone. We talk about being alone versus being lonely. You're not necessarily lonely if you're alone, right? You can be lonely in a relationship with somebody. You can live with somebody and be lonely. Being alone is more of a physical thing, right? And we generally want to be content in being alone and by ourselves and being at peace and being happy that we have time alone or ourselves to gather our thoughts, we get caught up in life and partnerships and parenting and work and other identities that are us, but they take over sometimes. And getting back to who I am as a person could take some time, right? And having that alone time helps with that. Lonely isn't necessarily a goal for anybody. It's not good to feel lonely like nobody else is out there. One of the things about the pandemic, one of the biggest things about the pandemic is that you're not alone. You literally are not alone. There are 330 million other people in America. I think that's how many of us. There are 350 million or something like that. People in America, and almost 7 billion people in the world experiencing roughly the same thing that you're going through. There is somebody who's probably going through pretty close to the same thing that you're going through out there. You're not alone in that regard. You may feel like it, but don't feel like you're alone at any time. Okay, the EAP is a good resource for that. If you have relationships with other people at your job, just to talk about it and say, hey, I've been feeling like I'm going through this by myself, and you will probably find that other people will say, hey, me too. Opportunity to learn new skills. I took some web design classes at the beginning of the pandemic. Did not finish because it is hard. Okay. Harder than I thought. Okay. But I did do that. I was like, I've got this time at home. I feel like I should be doing something to expand my knowledge base. And I learned some stuff, right? I did learn some stuff. Not an easy task though, as I thought, right? Somebody says, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, we read those already. Yeah, so learn new stuff, and it could be anything. I'm looking at YouTube and using social media and the internet for good things. So there's a lot of good stuff on YouTube, how-to stuff. If you're interested in anything that you've never really looked at, YouTube's a good place to go and say, just type it in and say, okay, what is this about actually, right? Google it or Yahoo it or whatever, and say, hey, what is this actually about? Just to do some reading, on light reading, not necessarily enrolling in a traditional school or class. Get to know yourself, and that's really what it's all about, is knowing yourself and you'd be surprised at some things, right? At how resilient you are and strong you are and things like that. So getting to know yourself is usually going to be a treat. There's going to be some things that you say, like I was talking about earlier, I didn't know that I would make certain decisions or act a certain way or whatever. And those things, that's a good opportunity to say, you know what, I really want to change this thing, or I want to build on that, because I like that. I like that I can do this. I like that when the rubber hits the road, that I'm not phased. I'm steady. So how can I build on that? Maybe I'll read some books on expanding that part of me, right? Things like that. We talked about walking outside, so that's kind of a nature thing. Not necessarily picking flowers or watching birds, but you're in nature and you're appreciating outside, and the same can be said for music and art. Expand your listening, things like find your favorite genre of music and look up its roots, where did it come from, right? And so if it's pop, or I won't say pop, if it's like jazz, listen to the precursor of jazz, I guess, or rock and roll maybe would be jazz, or if it was, I guess, rhythm music, then it would be also jazz and things like that. Everything goes back to jazz, I suppose, right? Just listen to see if there's things that you like. Listen to something that you wouldn't normally listen to. Listen to your intuition, right? So I guess our guts kind of got us to where we are in life, like our gut instinct. I tell people all the time, if your gut is telling you something, listen, try it out. You're going on about your day. It's normal. Everything is good. And your gut's saying, hey, it's a thing. Pay attention to the thing. See what happens. See what comes from it. Follow through with it. All right. So your EAP is there for you, okay? Phone number is 800-865-1044, or you can go to the website anthemeap.com, all right? Your login is Lexington Fayette County Health Department, all right? We offer face-to-face counseling sessions, legal, financial consultations, child elder care consultation referrals, daily life resources, ID theft recovery, free credit monitoring. My Strength is Health Club. It's a health club for your mind. Comprehensive website with resources, self-assessments, health and wellness library, and legal forms as well, right? So a lot of good information there. Just a good website to go to, just to look around if you get time, okay? There's a code here. If you take your phone, open up the camera, and point it at this QR code, then a survey is going to open up, okay? Just open up your camera on your phone, point it at this, and then hit the thing that pops up, the link. It'll take you to an evaluation, and just click that, and you can fill out that evaluation, okay? And all comments are highly appreciated. They help me grow, and then we know what we need to tweak about the training, if anything, okay? I appreciate you all for listening and participating, especially just for being here. Says your presentation was filled with practical and balanced wisdom. This was excellent. Thank you, sir. You're very welcome, and thank you very much for all your input and sharing your information. I appreciate that. And so with that, I think I am done. I appreciate you all.
All right, thanks, Raheem. Yeah,
Thank you, Ron.
Good information. Most
Thanks.
of it, we just gotta relax and think and try to discover new ways to handle what comes at us every day. So I appreciate that. And we've got the recording that we will put out there later. Heather will take care of doing that for those that didn't have a chance to join today. So